My FPL Game Week 9 team selection with Gyökeres scoring 2 goals in the Champions League. Is that enough to make me keep the faith with him for a couple more game weeks? I've got 4 free transfers, so lots of possibilities this week, but it is also possible that I roll my transfer once again to hit the magical 5 free transfers. We're going to discuss all of that, future plans for the likes of Crystal Palace. What should we be doing with Arsenal? Should we be keeping someone like Bruno Fernandes or João Pedro, who still doesn't look like he's having a shot? Enzo Fernandez looks like he's going to be back for Chelsea against Sunderland. All of this to discuss in my Game Week 9 team selection. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim, and subscribe if you are new to the channel. Before we have a look at Game Week 9, a quick review of Game Week 8. I decided not to do any transfers, roll up to 4 free transfers, and I got 70 points overall. It was a small green arrow above the safety score of 67. Of course, that is taken from livefpl.net, and that is the amount of points that I need in order to not change rank. So a small green arrow of about 3 points, a game week rank of 2.2 million, and moving my overall score up to 492. And most importantly, it put me inside the top 1 million for the first time this season. Inside the top 900k, just about, with 884k being my new rank at the moment. In terms of how this game week went, there wasn't too much to talk about, but actually it was the 2 players that I was probably least expecting points from, in Bruno Fernandes and Iliman Ndiaye, that did enough to get me the green arrow this week. Bruno Fernandes is actually the star player in terms of ownership versus points that I got. He gave the biggest boost to my rank with 8. Of course, Gabriel outscored him with 12. Haaland, of course, scored twice to get the full bonus and get 26. And Iliman Ndiaye did get defensive contributions away at Manchester City. So in a week where I didn't feel like my team looked perfect on paper, with 2 players going away to Liverpool and Manchester City respectively, and rolling my transfer, I'm pretty happy the fact that I got a green arrow, and I'm up to 4 free transfers inside the top 1 million for the first time this season. Of course, I would like to be making bigger grounds. Like, I'd love to be inside the top 100k already this season, but I've actually only had 1 red arrow so far this season. Now, that might be because I started so badly that had a low base to work from, but I'm still pretty happy with how the game weeks continue to tick over. I've still got a couple of chips left to play and another green arrow here. Let me know how you're getting on with your season. Are you flying? Are you trying to claw it back? Where are you at? It's been a very difficult start to the season for some of us, but I also see in the comments that some of you are absolutely flying already. So there are actually quite a lot of moving parts with my team and lots of small different transfer combinations that I know people are talking about that I just want to go through. The first one is the big downgrade of Gyökeres that I'm seeing mentioned, and I could do that. Gyökeres to Creepy Jr. would probably be the one that I would go to, and it'd give me all the money in the bank to do someone like Stack all the way up to Bukayo Saka. Now, that is a transfer combination that I like, particularly if we get confirmation that Evan Nilsson is out for this week or for a few weeks. It gives me a team that looks like this. I can keep Reinders, I can bench him this week, have a team that looks pretty strong. The only issue with this is once Evan Nilsson is back, I do expect him to take his place back in the team, which means Creepy Jr. won't be getting any minutes reliably. He might be coming off the bench, which then means going forward, I'm probably stuck starting Reinders every week. And I think he starts against Aston Villa at the weekend, but with all the other players like Cherki, like Marmoush being back available, I just don't think it does enough positive things for his minutes, and also how advanced he's likely to play, because it looks like they might be without Rodri and Gonzalez, so he might be forced to do a bit more defensive work. So I don't really want to be starting him every week, despite how it does make the rest of my team look quite nice. It also gives me the 0.1 in the bank that I would need to do João Pedro out to buy Mateta next week. But then I'm left with no Chelsea at all. And it's more the fact that it doesn't allow me to do Reinders to anyone going forward, unless I was to downgrade Tarkowski to free up a bit of money, or to downgrade Bruno Fernandes. So I don't think that's the transfer combination I'm going to go with this week. Just to talk a little bit on Bruno, I think Bruno Fernandes is probably the easiest way for me to get to Saka, but I'm not sure long term whether it's worth it, particularly worth it if it means selling Gyökeres as well. Like, Gyökeres and Bruno both out to buy Saka, I'm just not sure he's worth it, and I do want a little bit more time in order to fully understand what I want to do with Bruno. Is Saka worth it over going with Gyökeres? Because if you take the Champions League into account, Saka has blanked technically in terms of goal output in all 3 of the last games, apart from the penalty. And if there is a chance that Gyökeres does take penalties going forward, I'm still not certain that Saka is definitely a better pick than Gyökeres, but a million more now given I've missed the price changes. The other option, so as I said, I could just do Bruno Fernandes to Saka and probably downgrade Gyökeres to someone like a Mateta. And that is another option. But again, I'm buying Mateta away at Arsenal this week. It doesn't feel like it's better for this week specifically. It then also means I've got 0.9 in the bank, but I can't get up to Enzo Fernandez from Reinders. It only leaves me 6.5 million in the bank. So both of those are transfer combinations, but that doesn't improve my team this week, right? Saka and Mateta versus Bruno and Gyökeres. I'd rather Bruno and Gyökeres for this week specifically. Now, the other option I've got is to go back to game week 9 and to roll my transfer. I would play a team that looks like this. I would probably play Reinders over Stack, given that Reinders got a full rest or a rest from the start midweek. He came on as a substitute. That is absolutely possible. But I do think that that last midfield spot is the weakest. I would say I'm about 30% that I'll roll my transfer this week. And I actually think the most likely is freeing up the last bit of money that I need to do Reinders up to Enzo. I'm just not sure that I can trust Reinders' minutes long term with the amount of players that they've got back. And I do like some of those Chelsea fixtures that they've got. This would mean I need to free up 0.5 in order to do that transfer. There are a couple of places I could do it. If I don't like Stack could just go and I could downgrade him to King of Fulham. He's 4.5. He'd sit last on my bench every week, but he does get a reasonable amount of minutes. But I think the most obvious one, the other one I could do is Tarkowski down to a 5 million option. The issue is Burn has already risen and also Chalobah is slightly too expensive. So I can't get to anyone. It would probably be Keane that I would go to, just do a similar Everton to Everton swap. It would also give me a bit of buffer in the bank. That's another possibility. And if Branthwaite is going to be out for a while with his injury, then going to Keane is not that bad and he's probably quite similar to Tarkowski. But I think the most likely thing is if Anderson is out, I would downgrade him to a 4 million option to someone like Goodmanson. Unfortunately, Alderete, Mukiele and Rodon, all other 4 million options, have all risen to 4.1. So I don't have the money in the bank to go and buy them this week. I'd have to go for a 4 million option. I could also look at Burnley at Esteve, but I think I prefer the Leeds defence. Now, the only other option that I have is to go and buy Tuanzebe of Burnley. The reason it's important is he's 3.9 million and he has started the past 2 games over Ekdal. For anyone who's got Ekdal, it doesn't look like he's definitely going to get his place back in the team. And the reason that Tuanzebe would be slightly better for me is it gives me that 0.1 to do João Pedro to Mateta in game week 10 if I wanted to do that transfer. But I do think that the Leeds defence is much better than the Burnley defence and Tuanzebe. I'm not certain he keeps his place. And then suddenly I'm looking at a bench with Stack, who I don't like, Tuanzebe, who I don't like, and then Richards, who will probably be rotating and won't have a good fixture most weeks. So I think the most likely scenario is that I do Anderson to Goodmanson if I have the to free up the money to do Reinders up to Enzo Fernandez. Of course, there is a possibility that I roll my transfer. And I know lots of people say, why are you talking through all these scenarios when you just end up rolling? Because this is where my thought process is at. There are lots of different things feeding into what my plan is this week. Just because I've rolled for the past couple of weeks, that's because I've had an eye on buying a Crystal Palace attacker. That's because I'm still trying to figure out what to do with someone like a Gyökeres or a Bruno Fernandes. I'm not certain that I need to sell Bruno. I'm not certain that Bruno is worse than Bukayo Saka as a pick. And I know lots of you will disagree with that. There are just a few options there that we've spoken about. I know I normally look at graphics, but to try and look at a few other things and different potential transfer routes over the next couple of weeks, that's the best way for me to do it, to talk through that in a slightly different structure. So just to show you what that would then mean for my team going into game week 9, I, at the moment, have not confirmed anything. And I would say I'm still about 40-30% chance that I do roll my transfer and go up to 5 free transfers and just play Reinders this week and not go for Enzo Fernandez, despite the fact that he has a great fixture at home to Sunderland. It is definitely a possibility that I roll my transfer again this week. But I have rolled up to 4. And I think my team has been slightly behind, and I've done quite well to get a green arrow in some weeks where I think my team has lacked a couple of the better picks. But I don't think I'm going to do the Gyökeres Fernandes transfer move this week, particularly because I like Mateta more than I like Waltemada, and Mateta goes away to Arsenal this week. So if I am going to make a transfer, it will be because Anderson is out injured, or I decide to downgrade Tarkowski if Anderson is going to be back available. Both of those things to free up a bit of money, the 0.5 million that I need in order to do Reinders up to Enzo Fernandez with my second of my 4 potential transfers that I have available. I've got David Raya and Gabriel in my defence. I'm actually coming round to David Raya being a better Arsenal pick than maybe I expected. And the reason for that is because there are other premium defenders like Munoz, like a Virgil van Dijk, that in the next few weeks, people will look at buying. But if I had double Arsenal, I'd either be adding a third premium defender and looking to play a back 4, which is possible, or I'd be adding a third premium defender and not be able to start someone like a Senesi, someone like a Richards, Anderson if he's available, and not really get the value out of them, even though they're really good picks. Or I'd have to sell an Arsenal defender in order to do it anyway. And Arsenal just looks so incredibly good defensively. 0.52 expected goals conceded per 90 so far this season is just incredible. So I do actually suddenly quite like that I've got Raya, and I can just keep him for the long term and then maybe swap around some of the other defenders like a Munoz, a Virgil van Dijk in that Tarkowski spot that I've got. And I know I could just downgrade Tarkowski to Keane in order to get the money to do that Enzo Fernandez transfer. But I do quite like having that second premium defender in my team in order to have that structure in case I wanted a Van Dijk or I wanted a Munoz going forward. Senesi is in at home to Forest with Sean Dyche. We expect that to probably be more low scoring. We do have Semenyo. It's probably not as good for him. I've actually moved the captain armband off Semenyo to Bruno since Sean Dyche has come in. Enzo Fernandez, the planned transfer, I have not confirmed it yet, but him potentially in for Reinders. Illiman and Dye at home to Spurs is just a nice, reliable option. Gets DEFCON in some games. His attacking threat is pretty good. He's on penalties. And then it's Haaland, Gyökeres, and João Pedro. Gyökeres and João Pedro are absolutely on radar to be transferred out over the next couple of weeks. But as I've said, the main forward I want to buy is Mateta, and he goes away to Arsenal this week. So I may well make a forward transfer going into game week 10 next week once that Palace Arsenal fixture is out of the way. I don't think there's anything else I really look at doing. It's just if I want to free up money to do Ryan's up to Enzo and which player I take that money out of. And if I decide not to do it, then I will roll my transfer. And I know there's going to be comments of enough is enough, but I'm rolling my transfer. But it is still a possibility. And I'm just being very honest with that I haven't fully made up my mind. And I do partly need an injury update to the likes of Branthwaite. Can I buy Keane? To an Anderson, can I sell him? Or what is the other potential injuries? How did Chelsea also get on in the Champions League this evening? So there is lots of moving parts. The only real change to my starting lineup I plan on making this week is potentially buying Enzo Fernandez. Anyway, it is a Friday evening deadline, so the complete guide video will be out on Friday morning. So if you have any questions that you want answered in that, any transfer combinations, players to buy, any key questions for the game week, do drop it all in the comment section down below. I'll do my best to answer some of those throughout the day on Thursday. If not, hopefully everything gets answered in that complete guide video on Friday before the Friday evening deadline. Anyway, that is it. Let's wrap it up. A green arrow. Hopefully we can get another one this week. Hopefully Gyökeres brings some of that scoring form from the Champions League into the Premier League. And hopefully João Pedro can at least have some shots on target. That would be a good start. Anyway, let's wrap it up there. Thank you all for watching. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new, and I'll be back again very soon.